Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the Ice, Amateur Sports TV, Tuesdays and Thursday nights, 7 o'clock, your number one source for amateur sports. Earlier this week, we had a chance to talk to gentlemen from Saskatchewan with regards to the financial endurances and some of the potential spin-offs that are occurring to some of the higher junior programs, but not necessarily minor hockey in Saskatchewan. Today, we're going to talk to a gentleman, Levi Taylor, the U-18 AAA commissioner here for hockey in Manitoba. We're going to discuss a letter that was proposed and sent to the authorities, call them the authorities, but the people that make the decisions on who and what can play and where they can play here in Manitoba. We haven't seen a budge since November with regards to return to play action. We hope to shed some light on that here in the next couple of weeks because the window is closing. There is not much time, and we are starting to see certain rinks, especially in rural areas, take out ice a lot sooner than expected. So here on the ice, please welcome Levi Taylor, the under-18 commissioner for you here at Hockey in Manitoba. Levi Taylor joining me today on the ice. Thanks, Levi, for taking the time. How are things today?
Things are good. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate the time. Last week, I've got to ask you, you put together a letter, 2-page document to Mr. Rusin, government, the authorities that are making these decisions to return to play. Why was it so important to get the letter out now? And who helped you, if anybody, draft this letter to represent U-18 AAA hockey?
Yeah, so at the league level, we thought it was important to get something out, something that would advocate for our players, the hockey community in general, and kids in general, quite frankly, to get them back into some physical activity. Organized sport, we feel, plays a critical role in their development. We got optimistic when the government of Manitoba sent out those various surveys asking for the public to engage. We felt as though the hockey community spoke loudly in that they wanted organized sport back. And then with the newest restrictions, the facilities remain closed, organized sport remained prohibited. So we heard that these restrictions were going to be maintained and felt it was time to kind of give our players a voice. As far as somebody helping draft the letter, I drafted it. We sent it to our league executive for feedback and then sent it out.
Were the teams also involved with the letter and seeing the draft before it became public?
Yeah, so like I said, I drafted it, sent it to our directors. So our directors are made up of our teams, okay, and the league executive, and received some feedback on it, made some minor tweaks, and then was able to send it out.
How much activity was in the U-18 AAA league prior to November? Like, was the league started? Was there preseason? I mean, teams obviously were hoping to continue because protocol in place, restrictions and guidelines in place, everybody was being safe. Tell us a bit before November 3rd.
Yeah, so it basically started in the summer when Hockey Manitoba started developing its Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 return to play plans, providing guidance for what would be necessary for the different leagues and associations to get back to play. And through that guidance, we as a league came up with a strategy through our executive and our members developed a strategy. We completed the Hockey Manitoba return to play protocols, put them in place, spent some time in training camp in Phase 2 where it's basically just skills development. And then, once we got the approval for Phase 3, which was gameplay, we set a date, October 16th, to start our season. And and we started it, and it went well. Some of our teams got up to 8 games in the less than a month or so. Others only played, 3 or 4, just based on circumstance. We were cautious, where, the guidelines said where players have any sort of symptoms, they've got to sit out, and you've got to take your COVID screening before any on ice or off ice session. And we did that. And then players, if they had a sniffle or if they had a cough, they sat out, and they went to go get tested if necessary. And, we did the mask thing, and we did everything that Hockey Manitoba and the government asked of us. I think we did it effectively, and we were able to put on a few games, and unfortunately the case numbers rose, and they closed facilities.
The facilities being closed hurts not just the hockey community, but especially in rural areas when they're more recreation facilities, right? So it's not just a rink. It's it's aerobic classes, it's pickleball, it's off ice, it's a gymnasium, perhaps it's swap meets, it's flea markets, it's everything that a community can be involved. And you being from a rural town as well, Levi, talk about how much that shuts down the community involvement and just the aura, the positive aura of just being out and being able to do something for almost 2.5 months now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the rec facilities in rural Manitoba are the hubs, and this year's a little different. Even when we were beginning our season, there weren't large groups. We didn't want people congregating there, so it was still a different look. But at least the kids and the youth of the province could participate in physical activity, and they could meet with their teams in a socially distanced and safe manner, and they could interact and develop their personal skills and their leadership skills and their character as people. There's a lot to be said about these team activities contributing to development, and we think it's important. I mean, a lot of our players and players in other elite streams are future leaders of of the province. They're going to go on to do not just hockey related things, but important things overall. And it's the skills that they learn playing team sports that help them do that.
I couldn't agree with you more, Levi. I mean, I played organized sport. I'm sure many athletes will tell you that you take those skills off the rink, off the court, and you apply them to everyday life, and they make the character and the personality of a player that much stronger, and able to work or able to perform in the society that much better. The bottom line is, Levi, the province made this decision. It's great that everything is now considered non-essential, but saying that, well, why isn't organized sport in that degree? Is it because of the crowd groupings? Because, I mean, you can go to any big box, you can go outside and you can see crowds gathering everywhere. What is it about a hockey rink or a recreation complex that is so much different?
Yeah, you know what? That's the question I think a lot of people have. When you implement the same measures, you reduce capacity even more so than those types of stores. You wonder. We saw most of minor hockey get started in October. And like I outlined in my letter, there wasn't significant spread. There was spread in hockey, but it's not minor hockey. It's not regulated hockey. I think the adult rec leagues potentially had some issues, but where we had the protocols in place and the guidance and leadership of Hockey Manitoba overseeing it, and everybody contributing, right? Like, we're working together towards a goal of allowing our kids to participate in physical activity and organized sport, and it worked. We didn't see mass spread that I'm aware of, and I haven't seen any numbers to suggest otherwise.
So as it stands, the facilities still remain closed. Is there a plan to return U-18 AAA hockey? And if so, is there a day or is there how much time, what kind of a season would we be seeing? Give us a bit of an idea of the future potentially of winter 21 AAA U-18 hockey?
Yeah, so we've discussed a number of different possibilities. Our season, our regular season, generally ends at the end of February, the second last week in February. And then we get into our playoffs, and we've got the TELUS West regionals and then the TELUS. Obviously, with this 3-week restriction taking us to February 12th, it's not going to be business as usual. What we're going to see is if they allow recreation facilities to open, we're going to spend, whether it's 10, 14 days in kind of a practice mode, in a skill development mode. And hopefully then, with if we can maintain the same protocols and make sure there's no spread, we can then engage in games. Now, if the extensions go on longer, it's going to be tough for a lot of programs to get started. I think even with this 3-week restriction that we're seeing, you're going to see minor hockey associations across the province cancel their season. And you're going to see a lot of rural facilities take out the ice and shut down their plants. So, whether kids are able to get on the ice after that in an informal way is possible. But again, when you kind of take out that sanctioned activity, you may lose some of the protocols, and that's not what we want. So, we've discussed a number of options. We want to get games in. But at this time, based on the circumstances, our biggest priority is just getting kids on the ice and helping them develop those, their skills, and keeping them fresh and, giving them reps to ensure that, they don't lose their development path. For our league in particular, a lot of our players are going to make the jump to junior, or they were planning on making the jump to junior, whether that's the MJHL or other junior leagues, the WHL, NCAA. This hurts their development. So we'll see, how that kind of plays out. But our focus is just getting on the ice and getting them reps. And, once we do that, and I think we can do it effectively again, and hopefully, prove our worth, I guess, hopefully we'll be allowed to play games. And then we can get that competitive nature back and, help them progress even more.
The same phrase is used all the time to explain when can we get back. The question is, we don't know, because we don't have that power. The powers that be control how and dictate what facilities are made available and what we can and cannot do within them. As it stands right now, Levi, nothing has been canceled in terms of a potential championship, a TELUS West, or a TELUS championship.
Nothing formally, no. Our league, we were asked whether we would participate in the regional championship, the Western Regional Championship, and that was in early January. And as the majority of our league decided that we didn't want that to be our focus. We didn't want to have a cutoff for when we'd have to end our season and move on to something like that. So we opted out for this year. Hoping that, whenever we get back on, we'll again get those games and get those reps in for all of our players, not just, the one team that can make it on. We want to develop, all of our players.
Right. We're going to talk about futures of players and, how to get them to that next level in their athletics and their academics with Levi Taylor, Commissioner U-18 AAA Hockey, right after this break. Stay with us on the ice. Joining me, Levi Taylor with U-18 AAA Hockey Commissioner here in Manitoba. Levi, we talked about moving players forward, giving them a chance to grow, because more likely than not, a lot of these players are looking to play in the junior ranks, potentially Div 1, Div 3 U sports. I mean, they're going to be graduating high school. They're going to be looking for that next step. Does this year jeopardize those aging out players?
I mean, I don't think there's a question that it puts it in jeopardy. You know, it'll depend on each player individually, whether they have put in the work at home, you know, the work on the outdoor rinks, you know, trained if they can, where they can. But there will be some who don't have access to various pieces of equipment, or, you know, to build that muscle that you'd see if they got to the gym and stuff like that. So it's tough to say exactly how it'll affect the players, but it will. It definitely will.
Definitely for the performance. In terms of, you know, the exposure side of things for these players, you know, if some of those teams were able to get in 8 games or so before November, that's really only their sample size they're going to have for their graduating year. Do you feel like that's enough, or do you feel like they're able to, obviously what they have to do off the ice? I mean, gyms have also been closed, unless you're a select few that have the city gym available, but nonetheless, we won't get into that conversation. Facilities, like you said, dryland training has become so imperative that, you know, demand to put that player through the rigors of on and off ice training, skill development, endurance, all that, not to mention the academic side of things. Really, truly unfortunate for a lot of these players. When it comes to this age group, do you think they've been handling it the best they can? By that I mean they're a little more mature, but they're also more social. They haven't been able to be social. What has been, in your eyes, some of the other issues that we're going to be facing here in the near future, Levi? Because we're talking hockey, but there's so much more to life than just hockey.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the letter you wrote about was talking about the mental health and wellness of these players, these teams. We're not talking about finances. The bottom line is, are these kids able to get through this and move forward?
Yeah, and you know, that's the question that, you know, I think a lot of people have. You know, I cited a Hockey Canada survey in that letter that showed 45% of parents are concerned about their kids' mental health. You know, this can't be easy for them. You know, it's not easy for adults who, you know, have the coping mechanisms and you know, the stability. You know, looking back at, you know, our teenage years, you know, these are formative years where we develop relationships and we develop friendships, and through hockey we develop lifelong friendships. You know, our teams are doing the best they can to hold, whether, you know, weekly Zoom conferences with their players and keep them engaged, you know, keep that team aspect and that social aspect. It's not the same, no, but, you know, they're doing their best. And, you know, it's difficult to look at, you know, that point in their lives and to have sport, which, you know, isn't the end all be all. It never is, but it's important in development. And especially for kids who have committed themselves, you know, they've worked hard to get to this elite stream. And like, you know, we talked about, they're at a crossroads here. They're about to make the jump. Or, you know, they needed that exposure this year to make that jump. And you know, when you make that jump, you play NCAA or you make the WHL, it leads to other opportunities and other friendships and other relationships. You know, I mean, every NHL player comes through a U18 league and they develop there and they move on. And there's going to be negative effects of not having a full season.
Yes. Off the ice, absolutely. On the ice, of course, the exposure certainly isn't there. What is the strength of U-18 AAA hockey in Manitoba? Are the teams, what are we seeing in terms of production and players, competitive play? Obviously, let's talk about prior to this year, then upcoming to this year. I mean, I remember watching, the Winnipeg teams because I'm from Winnipeg, but there's a lot of great talent playing AAA hockey here in Manitoba.
There certainly is, yeah. I mean, our league's fairly competitive. You're always going to have your top and bottom teams, but for the most part, the majority of our teams are competitive, and that changes year to year based on the Bantam AAA programs, or sorry, the U-15 AAA programs. The strength is that kids can stay at home and play hockey at an elite level. You look at different provinces and open zones and billeting and stuff of that nature, and we have the luxury where we're in a regional model, and kids can stay home and they can hang out with their friends and they can go to the school they've always gone to and play elite hockey. So that's a strength of our league. We've got some excellent coaches in our league that have been here a very long time and have contributed to our league for a very long time, and they help in the development of kids. You look at the Winnipeg Wild, constantly top of the league, just an excellent program. And that starts with the coaching staff and their manager, and it just produces good hockey players and good people. And there's other programs around our league that are similar.
When you look at AAA hockey, I mean, Winnipeg had, back when I was playing, had I think it had 11 or 12 AA teams, 4 AAA teams. Now we've got 3 in Winnipeg, and I mean, does that mean that there's not enough players playing anymore? Does that mean there's players moving on further before they age? Or is it just because we're just seeing teams formed at a level that are most competitive when we have X amount of teams per region?
Yeah, I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think on the male side, hockey enrollment has dropped off, or is in decline anyway. On the female side, it's not. It's actually increasing. You've got hockey schools that recruit players and bring players over that normally would play in our league that go to a specific school. Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, I think we've got a good number of teams in our league. It's a competitive league. We do well at the TELUS West Regional every year. So it's tough to say what the drop off is, but I mean, there's benefits to playing in the league for sure.
No doubt. Do you see a drop off, not just for AAA hockey, but for all sport occurring since we've seen such a large amount of time in this winter without facilities open?
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't have any sort of numbers like that. I think you are going to see a drop off. You look at the first year hockey players who, maybe given a full second year this year, would have really enjoyed it and grown that passion for the game. Instead, they're doing something else, and that's okay too. But that might hurt the numbers of enrollment from that particular class. You're going to have the players who are transitioning to hitting, who would have been in their first year, and if nothing goes this year, then will be in their second year next year. That could hinder, their desire to play. Those players moving into the U-18 level, when you enter high school and you have different priorities, perhaps when you take a year off, it doesn't help your love for the game, I don't think. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I mean, certainly, the one thing that you mentioned, you touched on earlier in our episode here, the voice for the kids that has been lament or non-existent, and the voice of the volunteers and the organizers behind the scenes. Those are the two groups I think that matter most when it comes to, or matter just as much as the participants, I should say, because that is what sport is all about here in any province. And the fact that it's been shut down truly is unfortunate. I want to end with this last question to you, Levi. The letter that you had put together, what was the overall goal in producing that? making it public, and making sure that it's sent to the proper authorities?
Yeah, our goal was to open the lines of communication. We have felt that the communication, from government officials down hasn't been great with respect to sport and recreation facilities. And so, they open up that engaged survey, and I'm positive there was strong support from the hockey community, but then they don't really release the information. As far as I didn't see anything about the rec facilities from that survey. And so, if you're going to ask for opinion, then maybe rely on it, or don't ask. But the point was just to open the lines of communication and see where it leads. I mean, we've been patient here, working through the proper channels and waiting till the numbers go down for 2 months already, 2.5 months already. And so, as we kind of talked about, our regular season tends to end in the end of February. So we're kind of running out of time. And, there's a lot of support in the hockey community behind the scenes that wasn't made public. And so I just felt that, we have somewhat of a platform at the AAA U-18 level. We're the highest level of minor hockey. And I thought it was important that we say something, that we, make our concerns known, and that we open up the conversation. And I think maybe that's most important is, there's lots of people talking about what are the negative effects of, COVID, but an equally important conversation is what are the negative effects of prohibiting physical activity and having kids socially isolated. And
Do you think this should have, Levi? Do you think this should have been a matter? I'm sorry. Second, this is my last question. I apologize because you led me to a really good point here. I mean, we didn't know how long this activity, these guidelines and restrictions would have occurred. Do you think it would have been better if we received better lines of communication and more of a proactive approach, say the spring or early summer, knowing that come the fall, we are going to have to deal with not only the primary issues of we're canceling or we're delaying the hockey, we're delaying phase 1, 2, 3, but the spin-offs to everything that's occurred, like we've mentioned, in terms of volunteer support, the financial dividends that are occurring in small and big towns, to the state of mental health and socially isolated teenagers. Do you think it would have been better if we were, I don't want to say the word better prepared and just dealing with the scratching surface primary issues? Could we have planned it any better?
It's an interesting.
I know it's a hard question. I apologize.
It seems, I mean, you look at the situation we're in, and you have to wonder if it could have been planned better, if better decisions could have been made early on. I want to be careful. Hockey Manitoba made good decisions. The hockey community made excellent decisions. Like I said, we implemented protocols. We implemented a number of measures to ensure safety. We limited capacity. We limited bus capacities. We prohibited spectators. We used masks. We used the screening tool. We did everything we were asked, and we did an effective job. And like I said, there wasn't significant spread in minor hockey in general, and that's a large community. In our league, there was none. So it's frustrating to, do what's asked, to spend the time and effort to put those protocols in place. Teams, also put out financially to buy various cleaning machines and to book additional ice so that they could, space it out between the next group. and it just didn't reflect on our ability to continue to play. So and that's frustrating, I think, as from a hockey community as a whole.
Yeah.
Usually in sports, you do what's asked of you, and you get promoted to the next line, or you get extra ice time. Here we seem to have done everything, and we got benched.
We're still riding the pine, so to speak, Levi. And I think all sports are. I mean, you look at, like you said, Hockey Manitoba. I mean, I've spoken with a lot of different associations at the Sport for Life building. They too have followed exactly what they were supposed to do: pen to paper, dot the I's, cross the T's. A great job by all of those associations, and I truly feel, like you said, the purpose of that letter was to reestablish communication lines to see a return to play sooner than later. Levi Taylor, Commissioner of U-18 AAA Hockey, I want to thank you very much for your time, and thank you for answering my hard questions, because, I mean, it takes a lot of brawn and a lot of bravery to, put the foot forward and really speak for the thousands and thousands of sport players, kids, who are unable to speak for themselves. Thank you so much for doing that and starting the ball with that, Levi. And thanks for spending some time with me here on the ice.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Levi Taylor, again, U-18 AAA Commissioner for Hockey here. Want to remind everyone, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 o'clock is On the Ice. And again, really appreciate your feedback. And get out there and get some fresh air, even though it's kind of chilly. Get out there, get on the rinks, and we look to see some more guidelines and restrictions being loosened here in the near future. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.